Hello everybody, my name is JoyofCrimeArt, and it's June once again, which can only mean one thing. That's right. It's time for the Q-Force Pride Month Special! Released on Netflix in 2021, Q-Force is an adult animated comedy series following the exploits of Steve Merryweather, aka Mary, a special agent working for a secret government spy organization known as the AIA. But after coming out as a gay man, Mary gets passed over for the position he wants at the agency despite being the most qualified for the job, is instead forced to run his own smaller division based in West Hollywood known as Q-Force, made up of other LGBT plus agents who Mary was able to recruit. Now Mary, alongside the rest of his team, are forced to face international terrorists, deep-sea government conspiracies, and systemic societal homophobia in order to prove that they're just as capable as any straight agent. When the teaser for the series first came out, the online reception was definitely less than positive, as the teaser had managed to find a way to piss off just about everybody, with people on the right accusing the show of being nothing more than woke pandering garbage, and people on the left accusing the show of being straight up offensive. Oh, I'm sorry, Pride Month. Gay up offensive, due to the teaser's use of what many people perceived as gay stereotypes. This in spite of the series' creator, Gabe Liedman, being an openly gay man himself. Looking at the teaser myself, yeah, it's pretty rough. Mostly just being made up of sex jokes with little to no indication what the series' actual plot was besides just gay people.
The room's empty. I wasted all that masculinity on nothing.
Not nothing. My little butthole went boop.
God, you're gay!
Even Gabe Liedman himself wasn't a fan of the teaser, believing that it didn't capture the level of heart that the series truly possessed. This seems to be a near exact repeat of what happened with High Guardian Spice, another LGBT-focused cartoon that I've talked about on this channel before, which also garnered a ton of negative press when it was first announced due to having a lackluster teaser. Though to be fair to Q-Force, Netflix has never really been that great at marketing their adult cartoons in general. I mean, look up the initial trailers for shows like F is for Family or The Midnight Gospel. Both great series with tons of nuance, but Netflix really just marketed them as a generic raunchy sitcom and stoner comedy respectively, despite both series being so much more than that. So maybe the same would hold true for Q-Force. A full trailer for Q-Force would eventually release about a month later, which thankfully did a much better job at conveying the series' plot and tone a lot more accurately. Unfortunately, however, this did little to appease the naysayers, and neither did the actual show upon its release, as the series garnered mostly mixed to negative reviews from critics and audiences alike, only scoring a 33% on Rotten Tomatoes, which is impressive. I mean, I thought Rotten Tomatoes just gave everything Netflix churned out a 100. I mean, what other explanation do you have for this? To be fair, the series' IMDb score was higher, getting a 6.7 out of 10, over double what the Rotten Tomatoes score was, but still not particularly great. Congratulations, Q-Force, you managed to reach the same level of critical acclaim as such beloved series like Slacker Cats and Jimmy Neutron Boy Genius. You know, I'm starting to think that not all IMDb scores are created equal. But did Q-Force really deserve all the backlash it received, or were people just being too harsh on the show, judging it before it had a chance to prove its worth? Well, in the spirit of Pride Month, I wanted to find out for myself. So let's dive in and take a look at Q-Force. Also, spoilers ahead. That's right, I'm spoiling Q-Force. This is your final warning. So the first thing that stood out to me about Q-Force, at least when I first watched it, would have to be the animation. The series honestly looks pretty good visually, especially for a raunchy adult comedy. The show was animated by Titmouse, and honestly it does give off a bit of that Motor City vibe, featuring a pretty unique and stylized art style as well as surprisingly good lighting. The character designs are all really great too. Like if I showed you what some of our main characters look like, I bet you'd be able to get a decent idea of what their personalities were based purely on their designs alone. And the series fight scenes, while infrequent and not particularly flashy, still manage to have a good amount of weight to them. You know, I'm gonna say what no one else is willing to say, Q-Force might be one of the best looking cartoons of the 2020s. But animation is one thing, how are the actual characters? The best place to start is with the titular Q-Force, consisting of Mary, Deb, Stat, Twink, and Buck. Mary works well as the team leader and series straight man. Sure, he's definitely a tad effeminate, but you still buy this character as a secret agent, as the series provides several moments showcasing that he is competent and good at what he does. However, he can be a bit hot-headed and overzealous at times, which can often result in him making several bad and selfish decisions. I could easily see some people being turned off by this side of Mary's character, believing that it causes him to come across as too stupid and unlikable. However, I think the series does a good job of making you understand where Mary is coming from. As the series makes it clear that Mary has basically given up his life for the AIA, only to be pushed for the sidelines for over a decade just because he's gay. So it makes sense why he'd be so impulsive and desperate to prove his worth to the agency by any means necessary. Sure, he's a flawed character, but at the end of the day you can tell that he's still a good person who's trying to do what's right. Though in episode 2 he cheats on his boyfriend, and I know he was only doing it to get information from an enemy, but at no point does Mary feel conflicted about this, and the show never acknowledges this after the fact. Like, even Austin Powers made this a plot point. I will say it's kind of nice seeing a cartoon that has an openly gay man as the main lead for once, in a medium that's absolutely flooded with sad, lonely lesbians. In terms of MLM representation, Western animation is kind of being single-handedly carried by VivziePop. That's messed up. As for the rest of our team, we have Deb, the team's mechanic and pseudo-mother figure, whose main struggle throughout the season is trying to keep her spy life a secret from her wife Pam. There's Stat, the hacker of the group, a cynical goth lesbian gamer girl, who seems to be the only character that people online seem to actually like because, well, I already said, she's a cynical goth lesbian gamer girl. Do I need to draw you a map? And then there's Twink, a drag queen / master of disguise. He's the gay one, because every group of gay friends needs a gay one. Twink is probably my least favorite member of the team, as well as the character who was the most controversial upon the series release, due to many accusations of him being a gay stereotype, which, I mean, he is, let's not kid ourselves here. But to be fair, I've seen enough Shane Dawson in my time to know that there are some gay people who actually act like this. Given the fact that Twink was both created by and voiced by a gay man, I wouldn't go so far as to call his portrayal offensive. I mostly just find him kind of annoying, due to just how much of his personality revolves around being camp and the fact that he's probably the dumbest and most selfish member of the team, who most of the time is only there for comic relief. But he's not that terrible or anything, like wouldn't go as far as just to say he actively ruins the show or anything like that. We also have Buck, a high-ranking AIA agent, an old rival to Mary, who is forced to supervise Q-Force's activities since the agency at large still pretty much just sees them as a joke. Buck is your typical dumb alpha male type character, and acts as a good foil to the team. Sure, he's a jerk and vaguely homophobic, but you start to get the impression he would still be a jerk to our cast even if they were all straight. And while he's mostly a comic relief character like Twink, he's honestly my favorite character. I feel like he's the one who gets the most development, going from a jerk who clearly would rather be anywhere else, to really embracing the members of Q-Force not just as teammates but as genuine friends. And it's done in a way that feels pretty organic. They even give him a bit of a tragic backstory that, while brief and still mostly played for laughs, does sort of explain why he acts the way he does. In addition to the members of Q-Force, we also have V, Mary's former mentor and current boss, who is supportive of Q-Force, though disagrees with some of their more reckless actions, believing that if they're ever going to gain the respect of the agency, they need to play by their rules, even when the cards are so clearly stacked against them. She works well as the stern boss character who still clearly has a soft side. Overall, the cast is alright. They're not awful or anything, but they don't really feel all that special either. However, I think the show does a good job of showing a good spectrum of how LGBT people can act. Sure, you got characters like Twink who can be very flamboyant, but then you have a character like Stat whose sexuality doesn't really impact her character all that much, with all the other characters falling somewhere within that spectrum. Though for a show literally titled Q-Force, it's a little bit surprising to me that all we see in terms of LGBT representation are gay men and lesbian women. No talk about bisexuality, pansexuality, asexuality. Twink is a drag queen, but beyond that there's no exploration of gender identity or transgenderism. It sort of seems like a missed opportunity, but I don't know, maybe the creator just didn't feel comfortable writing about those topics when he didn't have any first-hand experience with them, or maybe that just wasn't the story he was trying to tell. Beyond the LGBT themes though, it's pretty clear that the main appeal of the series is the comedy. So how is it? Like, for an adult animated sitcom like this, you could definitely do a lot worse, but for the most part the humor just feels pretty standard, mostly being made up of pop culture references or sex jokes. Though to be fair, the humor isn't all bad, and occasionally the series was able to hit me with a joke that managed to make me laugh. In terms of writing, the series is okay. I think it does a good job at showing some of the more subtle ways that systemic institutions can often target people in the LGBT community. I can appreciate the series showing a bit more subtlety, especially given how easy it would have been to make the homophobia our characters face more on the nose. But I'd also be lying if I said the series was really doing anything that unique or insightful. You kinda get the point of what the series is trying to say the moment Mary is passed over for his position in the agency, which is like, in the first 5 minutes of episode 1. The series does have a continuous story that stretches across the entire season, but it feels kind of all over the place. First we're stopping the Kazakhs from buying uranium, then we're fighting this evil corrupt billionaire, and then we're dealing with this conspiracy within the agency that involves the members of Q-Force all becoming wanted fugitives. And for the most part, these plots don't really connect all that much. I'd say the last arc about Q-Force becoming wanted fugitives is probably the most ambitious, as we learned that, just like a lot of real-life government agencies, the AIA have done some pretty shady stuff in the past that they're desperate to cover up. In this case being Project Grayscale, a secret operation designed to wipe the mind of LGBT agents in order to get rid of them. Since the entire first half of the season is devoted to Mary slowly proving his worth to the AIA higher brass, suddenly putting Mary in a position where he has to choose between his position in the agency and doing what's right is a good conflict. Though it does end on a bit of an anti-climax. Like, in the right or not, Q-Force is still committing an act of treason by going against the federal government, stealing classified information not just on Project Grayscale, but all of the AIA's shady dealings and attempt to use said information as leverage. This backfires, however, and said files immediately fall into enemy hands. Q-Force manages to get the classified information back, of course, and the agency just kind of gives them a slap on the wrist for their blatant insubordination, just because they put out the fire that they themselves caused. Like, I know the series is a comedy and all, but even so, you cannot convince me that the entire cast weren't executed by the deep state like 5 minutes after the credits rolled. This is my headcanon. Q-Force ran for one 10-episode-long season before quietly coming to an end. I really feel like the initial backlash from the first teaser really did a lot to hurt the series right out the gate, as after that teaser came out, most people had already written the series off in their minds, and unfortunately the series' quality wasn't good enough to win people back. However, I wouldn't go as far as to say that the series is straight up bad. I'm sorry, Pride Month. Gay up bad. There are some aspects I like, the animation is stunning, some of the characters and jokes are alright, and I think the series touches on some very important issues in a kind of unique way. But even then, the series never really goes that deep with its subject matter either, and when the writing and most of the comedy feels so surface level, I can easily see why the show didn't captivate audiences. And really, I just feel like the premise is just something that most people wouldn't really care about. While it's obviously possible for straight people to enjoy shows starring LGBT characters, the main people who would be interested in a show like this would be people in the LGBT community, which is already limiting your audience a fair bit. Not saying that shows made for a niche audience shouldn't exist, in fact I believe the exact opposite of that, but I think it makes sense why a show like Q-Force wouldn't do as well as, say, a show like Big Mouth. Most people can relate to being an awkward teenager, but only a select group of people can really relate to the struggles that the members of Q-Force go through. And really, how many of those people are really asking for gay Archer? It's hard not to feel a bit bad though. I mean, within the series itself, Mary talks about how much pressure he feels under to have Q-Force succeed, because he's worried that if he fails, it could be a major setback not just for him, but for the entire LGBT community as a whole. And I wouldn't be surprised if Gabe Lehman put a lot of his own feelings and experiences into the writing of Mary's arc. So see Q-Force bomb as hard as it did, it's kinda sad to see. But then again, it's not like Q-Force is the only piece of LGBT-focused media out there. And Twink's voice actor Matt Rogers had stated on a podcast the series could be revived on Peacock. The series was produced in part by Universal Television.
Like that's ever gonna happen.
Do I recommend Q-Force? I'd say for most people, probably not. I do think that a lot of the hate the series got was overblown, but at the end of the day, it's still a very middle-of-the-road series, and if you're looking for an adult anime comedy on Netflix, you have plenty of better options. However, while not large, I do think that there is a certain audience of people who would really enjoy this show, especially those who are in the LGBT community and are deep within the culture. I say watch the trailer, because while the teaser may have only showcased the series' worst attributes, the trailer, I think, does a much better job at indicating the series' style and tone. If it looks like your thing, then you'll probably like what you see, but for most everyone else, I say you can probably give it a skip. Wow, kind of a downer note to end on given that this is the Pride Month special and all. What are you gonna do? Have you seen Q-Force? And if so, what do you think of it? Leave your thoughts in the comments down below and- wait, did you hear that? Could it be? It is! Gay Santa!
Ho, ho.
Wow, this really is a Pride Month miracle. Anyway, have you seen Q-Force? And if so, what do you think of it? Leave your thoughts in the comments down below. I genuinely want to hear what you all think. If you like this video, feel free to like and subscribe, and consider checking out my Patreon if you want to see more videos like it. And as always, have a great day.
Merry Pride Month. Ho, ho, ho.